welcome to this edition of Biz1st in Focus. I am Shayan Rampati, and today we are joined by an eminent personality in the tourism sector. He is Srilal Mittapala. He is the former chairman of the Tourist Hotels Association of Sri Lanka. Began his career as an electrical engineer by profession, and he eventually served in the tourism sector for nearly 23 years. He's here to talk about the importance of environment, biodiversity, sustainability and conservation for the tourism industry. Mr. Mittapala, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Mittapala, first things first, how do you think the Sri Lanka's tourism sector is faring at the moment?
Okay. Pretty good on all fronts. Arrivals have been increasing year on year, month on month, and more importantly, along with arrivals, the foreign exchange earnings also has increased. As you know, that's a double-edged sword, that if the arrivals normally go up, your rates tends to come down. But in Sri Lanka's case, both indices have been showing growth, which is a good thing. Certainly post-war, we needed this spurt to come upstream, to catch up for the lost 20 to 30 years. So all that has been happening, and it's pretty good. The industry is strong, it is resilient, it has built a good stock of rooms now. So I think we are poised for the next phase of movement in the years to come.
Oh, why do you say this, Mr. Mittapala? There's an article which you say that Sri Lanka is currently not a destination for sustainable tourists.
Okay.
Why do you say this?
Right now, only a few companies, bigger companies, are really following sustainable development principles. Because as you know, sustainability and greening is a very much bandied word. There are a lot of people who are just climbing the bandwagon and doing sort of greenwashing and just doing it for the sake of doing, There are only a few of the companies who really understand sustainable tourism. It means, first of all, your business has to thrive, the communities have to thrive, and the environment also has to be looked after. So I'm not sure whether all those three elements are being looked at in a holistic manner by some of these developers. So that's what I say. Sri Lanka has to first of all understand what sustainable tourism is in a proper sense of the word, and then see what is being developed. Are our communities in where these developments are taking place, are they gaining anything from the development? But that's one of the principles of sustainability. Is the environment getting degraded? What's happening to Yala, for example? That's the best example we can have. I mean, Yala is becoming a no-go for many tourists. If you look at TripAdvisor, there's lots of negative comments. So is that sustainability? No, I don't think so. So that is where I'm saying, on the overall picture, we have much more to go. It's good time to sit back, take stock, and see how we go forward in a proper strategic manner.
Mr. Mittapala, why do you say we have to sit back and assess the situation? Upon the recommendations of the Prime Minister, a 13-member task force was appointed to steer the 2025 vision of Sri Lanka. And there are pretty big names here. I see Harry Jayawardena, Harry Selvanathan, Paddy Vithana. What is your comment on that?
That is exactly what I think the tourism industry is doing correctly, what the Prime Minister is doing. As you know, when I say take stock, I don't mean to close shop and stop everything. It's just take a pause and see where we are going. So it has already been done. As I know, the 2025 vision has come out. It's a wonderful document which speaks of all the necessary things that we need to know about, we need to go forward, about sustainability, about authenticity, about being limited development. All that has been put in the concept document. So now I think what the government is doing is setting up this task force to see that through. So that's the phase I'm talking about, that we need a unit to drive this in the proper direction. Now that the foundation has been done, I feel it's a good start. That is what I meant by saying it is the good launching pad at this point, with 2.1 million tourists, $3 billion US revenues, to take it to the next level in the proper manner within that concept.
Mr. Mittapala, Sri Lanka is famous for establishing committees, task force, commissions for various sectors. Now then again, we have a task force here with 30 members to drive Sri Lanka's tourism sector. But do you think whatever suggestion or recommendations that come out through this task force will be implemented?
I hope so. We have to have hope, otherwise we might as well pack up our bags and close shop here, you see. So there is some effort being made. I know I have been critical about some of the things that have been happening, but I think this time there is actually a proper document which lays out the concept and the framework for Sri Lanka tourism, and I'm willing to give some leeway. I think this task force will be able, because it's coming with a proper mandate right from the top, to take tourism in the proper direction that it needs to go.
Mr. Mithapala, I believe that the task force was given the responsibility of compiling a report on Sri Lanka's tourism industry and its vision. Do you have any particular idea that?
I am not quite sure of that mandate. I do know I was I was aware of what was going on in this wonderful document which is called 2025 Vision, and that lays out the concept, the idea of Sri Lanka tourism, which is all there in paper. So from my knowledge, this task force has been set up to take that forward, the action work. So I don't know whether we need to, because that all what you said of analyzing Sri Lanka tourism has been done where we want to go. So I think it's now the necessity is to take it forward, and implementation is the key word here.
What is the strategy the task force is focusing on implementing here?
I am not quite sure about that, to answer your question, because I don't know what the mandate of the task force is really, but from what I hear, it is to take this vision forward and make it happen.
Mr. Mithapala, Sri Lanka is targeting 4 million tourists by 2020. However, the Pacific Asia Travel Association recently at a summit forecast that Sri Lanka will only be able to hit 3.7 million. So are we following a concept of reaching high and, targeting high and reaching low?
Well, personally I believe you shoot for the moon, you'll get to the stars. So, or the other way around, I think. Shoot for the stars, you'll get to the moon, whatever it is. But anyway, I think, playing about with the numbers, 4 million, 3.7 million, it's not a big issue. It's just a small drop. What I would like to see the task force doing is to look at what is the correct carrying capacity that Sri Lanka can take in, and certain areas, for example. In certain areas like Sigiriya, is it overcrowded now? Is Kalutara overcrowded? And that's where I think the task force and the tourist board should make some course corrections and to say, these are the overall numbers, but these areas we have to be careful, and these are the type of numbers we want to push. So that type of direction has to be given, I think, by the task force. Now that Sri Lanka tourism has come to a fairly mature state, and we go to that second phase of development, as I said.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mithapala. Well, we're in conversation with Srilal Mithapala, the former chairman of the Tourist Hotels Association of Sri Lanka. We're going to cross over for a short commercial break. See you on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching Biz1st in Focus, and we are joined by Srilal Mithapala, who is the former chairman of the Tourist Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, talking to us about the tourism industry in Sri Lanka, how to boom it and how to develop it. Mr. Mithapala, there was a development in the world where several countries in the Gulf state severed ties with Qatar. I'm pretty sure it has a massive economic impact across the world. So how do you think it impacts Sri Lanka?
I think it will impact Sri Lanka tourism pretty badly because Qatar, as you know, is one of our biggest feeder airlines to Sri Lanka. I think, I may be wrong, but I think we were having 4 flights a day from Qatar, and from Qatar there are connections outside. So a lot of British tourists, a lot of tourists from Europe were coming via Qatar. So the first thing is that will have an impact on the tourist arrivals. And if you have to, deviate and go through a longer route, obviously when you're doing, 10 hours, you don't want to do 12 hours, 13 hours. So people might have other alternate thinking of, having second thoughts of coming to Sri Lanka. But on the overall, I think this is a bigger picture. It's has a far more bigger economic impact to the world. And I feel that some sort of settlement will come very fast.
So do you think Sri Lanka should formulate a contingency plan right now?
Oh yes, we should.
What would you recommend?
Sri Lankan Airlines to fly to a few more destinations, capitalize on the cancellations, and try to see what. But of course, that's a long term, because I don't think from a world perspective, world economic and macroeconomic perspective, this can happen. Because it's too complex. So I think some sort of solution will come, because if you don't fly across the United Arab Emirates and all those countries, Qatar will crash, I think, from what I feel. They have got isolated all over.
Mr. Mithapala, let's focus back on Sri Lanka. Maybe you hinted there is a dip in the tourism industry in Sri Lanka at present. So do you think Sri Lanka is doing enough to promote tourism in Sri Lanka?
Well, that has been the million-dollar question on all tourism stakeholders' minds. Yes, frankly, not enough proper, focused promotion has been going on. It's a little bit of a shotgun approach. We are going for a lot of fairs. We are in the markets, no doubt, but not in a focused manner. That's the problem here. We are using a lot of funds to do a lot of broad-based marketing, but there is no focused marketing on the, try to analyze, segment the markets and see, look, these are our primary markets, this is what type of promotion you will require in those markets. I think that is what the industry is crying for, a focused, proper, holistic marketing campaign in the different sectors. So that's not happening. So because of that, I feel this is a pent-up demand that is just firing up and coming by word of mouth, by other channels, by the informal, the social media. But certainly a formal, focused destination campaign has not really taken place for a while.
Mr. Mithapala, the question is how and why aren't we promoting? Because, if you look at it, Sri Lanka literally has everything. Its biodiversity is amazing. We have the beaches, the mountains, the hills, the buildings, you name it. So how come? Why?
That's a difficult question to answer. I think there have been some structural problems in getting the approvals done, to get the agencies on board. So there have been some changes, and I think there is a plan to roll out a digital campaign very soon, which is a good thing, because digital campaign has a big effect rather than the conventional marketing campaigns today. So I think that will have an impact, and that's going to come out very soon. So there have been some internal the changes, the structures and stuff like that. So there has been a few delays in getting this thing rolled out.
What about wildlife tourism in Sri Lanka? I believe that you are a wildlife enthusiast. You prefer living in the jungle, so I've been told. So what is your comment on wildlife tourism? Are we doing enough to promote that?
No, on that cards, no.
Let me rephrase the question, Mr. Mithapala. Let's define wildlife tourism. Okay. What is wildlife tourism?
Wildlife tourism is two extremes. You can have the soft wildlife people who come just to mark their attendance. I saw X, Y, and Z. I went to the zoo. I went to Pinnavela or FIGO, and then the hardcore guys who come immerse themselves. Now that is the type of market that we are talking about, wildlife, real wildlife tourism, who go there for 6-7 days, who go tracking a leopard for a long time, and they are willing to pay top dollar for those type of experiences. So that type of tourist is what we should be targeting, and I don't think we are specifically targeting that group. People who are coming on a round trip. They stop over at Yala, yes, we saw leopard, we saw elephant, right, and go. But there are very far and few between people who are coming to watch birds. There are specialist groups like that. So that is wildlife tourism, and only overall, I think about 23% of the tourists who come to Sri Lanka are going to the wildlife park, to Yala, if I'm not mistaken.
But some have been critical, saying that the Yala Wildlife National Park has been overly exploited, and this is coming from obviously strong animal rights activists, and I guess this is also a challenge for the tourism sector to how to balance the animal rights activists, because they prefer that the wildlife be kept alone, the elephant rides, so on and so forth. So how is the tourism sector going to handle all of this?
Yes, I think we have a big role to play. I believe, now we'll take the example of Yala. Yes, Yala, there is a huge problem. It's not only animal rights, it's fundamentally its over-visitation. It's bad for everything, bad for the environment, bad for the animals, bad for tourism. because it's now coming back on us and TripAdvisor bad comments. So I think while we certainly point the finger at the wildlife department and the tourism and saying they are not regulating enough, they are not enforcing the rules, I think the tourist providers themselves can self-regulate. I have always been maintaining, if the tour operators themselves say, I will not use this jeep driver because he misbehaves, half the problem will be solved, because they are the ones who are paying the jeep driver and he is doing that job because he wants money. So if you stop remunerating him and say, look, you are a bad driver, you are doing the wrong things in the park, we are not going to hire, we are going to blacklist you, instead of the wildlife department blacklisting you. So I believe we also have to take a role in this, take the responsibility and work with the government with the wildlife department to try and solve this problem. But it's a huge problem to solve, particularly Yala.
Mr. Mithapala, we are across for another commercial break. We are in conversation with Mr. Srilal Mithapala about a very interesting conversation about the development of tourism in Sri Lanka. I'm Shahid Rampati and you're watching Biz1st in Focus. See you on the other side. Hello, welcome back. You're watching Biz1st in Focus with me, Shahid Rampati. We are in discussion with the former chairman of the Tourist Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, Mr. Srilal Mithapala, on the development of tourism in Sri Lanka. Mr. Mithapala, we were talking about wildlife tourism. Let's talk about the wildlife tourism in other countries. How are other countries managing wildlife tourism and reserves?
Many of the good wildlife destinations and ecotourism destinations have very clear-cut regulations in place. About 12 years ago, 10 of us from the tourism industry were chosen to and sent to Costa Rica by the USAID funded it. It was a fascinating eye-opener for us, because in some places, even though we were a VIP group, we had to stay till the number of people who went into the reserve had come out, because they had a particular carrying capacity. There were only 100 people allowed on foot inside to the rainforest. Until 25 came out, we could not go in. Simple thing like that. Of course, you have a nice viewing gallery to look at things and study the ecotourism of that area till your time is right to go in. So simple things like that, carrying capacity. They have a lot of good systems in place, which has been enriched by over the years. So we have a long way to go to get there. And second, the other important thing is that a wildlife reserve is a reserve for animals. They are number one there. Now we forget that. In Yala we tend to go and we want to push the animal, we want to interact with him. We forget that that is a small plot of land that has been allocated and reserved for those animals. So when we go in there, we are the trespassers. We tend to forget that. So I think the foreign parks, some of the parks, I have been to some of the parks in Africa, some are good, some may have some problems, but they are, and the other thing is a lot of research that goes in. Even a private game reserve will do research about breeding patterns, about animal habitat, and all that goes into, making the whole place much better. Now here, even in our wildlife parks, we don't have any research. We don't know how many leopards there are. It's the private people who know really the number of leopards. There are cubs being born. Right now, quite honestly, there are a lot of cubs in Yala, and everyone is happy about it. But should we be happy? What's happening? Is there a population explosion? Where are these animals going to? Are they straying out of the park? No one knows. You see, so there are a lot of things that we need to do. So in other countries, there's a lot of research, tagging, following animals. So tourism can provide funds for that type of thing, In those countries, every dollar goes into those type of research we saw in Costa Rica. So that's what is lacking here. So I think the whole the picture, the system has to change.
Mr. Mithapala, we're talking about the over-exploitation of Yala. Now, since recent, we've seen a lot of elephant attacks, on jeeps, on safari jeeps, because apparently people are starting to feed the animals.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is true.
Again, I guess it draws down to lack of knowledge and research.
Yeah, lack of knowledge. It's actually the interesting part here is to bring in a tourism concept into this, is that it is unfortunately most often our own Sri Lankans. Because a foreigner, most of these foreigners who come are coming from a disciplined environment. And if they are properly told, look, this is a wildlife park, you behave like this, you don't get down from your vehicle, you don't feed the animals, they will by and large listen. It's more often the jeep driver or the safari provider who wants to entice the elephant a little bit closer and give them a thrill and perhaps get a better tip. So that's a wrong thing, that people have this notion that it is tourism that is ruining Yala. I don't think so. It is, if you look at the numbers, I think the local Sri Lankan numbers to Yala are much higher than the foreign visitors. So it is our people's bad discipline that are causing most of these problems in Yala. So tourism can really help. And if I have noticed, if you give a tourist a leaflet about what Yala is, he will read it, and by and large he will be very careful with the environment. I mean, take a simple thing, they will always look for a dustbin to throw their wrapper, they will never throw it in the park, because they are brought up in that culture, in that discipline.
Mr. Mithapala, let's shift gears slightly from wildlife to the more urban areas in terms of hotels and all that. Mr. Mithapala, Sri Lanka has been focusing on attracting tourists with big pockets and are setting up mostly high-end hotels in and around Colombo, which are mostly unaffordable. So do you think this is the way to go?
Again, that is a difficult question to answer due to a lack of proper research. Because post-war we have just rode on this boom, welcomed all kinds of tourists, whatever type of development you want, and as I said, we have come to a proper stage where we've got to take stock. So if you don't have research, you don't know really who are these people who are coming, what is their individual spend. Yes, we know they are spending $160 per person, but each nationality, where are they spending it on? We don't know those things. So that is where I am concerned. So I think, to answer your question, my belief is that the higher end tourists are coming. Those higher end establishments are doing successful from what I hear. The lower end is doing well. The mom and pop operation, the B&Bs and stuff like that, because that's all rustic, nice, authentic. The middle level 4-star, 3-star hotels are getting squeezed out.
But Mr. Mithapala, see, if you look at the facts here, Sri Lanka is targeting 4 million and we're in the 2 million range right now. But if you look at countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, they are dealing with, Thailand has 32 million visitors, and then Malaysia has 26 million, Singapore with 60 million, and Vietnam 10 million.
Again, I don't want to say that 4 million is correct or wrong. All I'm saying is we need to sit back and understand and research what do we need. Not just because Malaysia has so much we should go for that, or Singapore. What is Sri Lanka's carrying capacity? What does Sri Lanka have to offer? What do we have to lose? Because as you know, tourism has an impact on the environment. There is no question about it. So this is a very pristine country. That's the difference. In Malaysia, yes, it has a lot of biodiversity, but it's a large country. We are a small country, 65,000 square kilometers with a high level of biodiversity. So in that situation, would so many tourists be able to be accommodated is my concern. So one has to, it's an important study using biological sciences, you know, we have to get that and see really, and should we develop all areas, or maybe should we allocate certain areas for tourism, like a resort, and say do all the damage there, we'll control it. Have a sewage system, have water purification plants, all that, garbage separation, and make that an enclave, rather than have hotels all over the country going into pristine areas and damaging the environment.
Mr. Mithapala, what is your take on the safety and security of foreign tourists in Sri Lanka? I mean, if you look at our track record in terms of providing transport, we have a very, very weak public transport, train delays, and then we have overcharging tuk-tuk drivers, if you may say, when it comes to foreigners, and then sometimes foreigners are also harassed in public transport systems.
Okay, I think from an overall point of view, why Sri Lanka is booming is because of the peace and quiet that we have in the country. And overall, man, it is one of the safest countries to visit. And I myself, when I go to the airport, I sit at the tourist board counter. I have seen tourists coming at 11:30, 12 midnight. Young people coming and asking the counter, we want a bus, where can we go to? They have no itinerary. I spoke to them. So it's amazing that Sri Lanka has developed to that extent that a young couple with backpacks can come to the airport and say, like going to Singapore, we want to go somewhere, you see. So that safety is there. But as you said, individual issues are there in the country. Certain transport sectors, certain harassment does take place. But on an overall basis, Sri Lanka is really safe. And that's why people are coming. That's why we are seeing this new type of tourist who wants to do it independently. No longer are we getting busloads of people. That's diminishing. With a guide with the flag, come here, turn left, turn right. There are individual people coming and want to do it themselves. They want to take a bus, they want to take the tuk-tuk, they want to experience that. So that's a different segment that is coming in, which I think is because of the safety factor that is prevalent in the country.
But again, I should also keep you informed that the Minister of Tourism has held a recent meeting with including the IGP to discuss matters on how to tackle issues such as harassment. Now, this is massive issue in the down south region as well.
Yes, as I said, there are certain pocketed regions where there are some issues which I think we have to look at, and he is very correct to look at it and focus on that. But from an overall point of view, from no bombs going off, it's a secure country, it's quite stable. We have our political issues, but the tourist doesn't care. He's happy and he knows that the country is lovely to see. So that's why you are seeing lots of tourists taking bicycles, going by tuk-tuks, going by public transport. You take the Kandy train in the morning and see how many tourists go there. So it's an interesting new development of Sri Lanka tourism.
Mr. Mithapala, we have to wrap up. So just a quick message I want to give to the viewers who are wildlife enthusiasts, who want to visit Yala, Vilpattu, so on and so forth. What do you recommend to our viewers right now?
Remember, you are going into a pristine environment which is reserved for animals and not for you. You are the visitor. You are the trespasser. That's the animal's home. Like someone coming into your home, you don't want him running riot inside your home. So behave well. Keep quiet, observe and absorb. Secondly, don't be too Yala-centric. There are other lovely wildlife parks, Vilpattu, Minneria, Kaudulla, so many parks. So try to shift away from Yala if you can. And don't forget that this is a very unique thing that we have been blessed with in this country. And it will be a crying shame to see that it's degraded.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Srila Mithapala, for joining us on Biz1st in Focus this evening. Well, there you have it, a simple message from the former chairman of the Tourist Hotels Association of Sri Lanka. Behave yourselves in another person's house. Well, I'm Shah Jurampad. This has been Biz1st in Focus. Good night.